Hello, this is John Freeman. Today's Memorial Day, May 25th, 2015. It's around 7:40 p.m. People have finished their fun for today under the name of remembering. The pavilions are empty. People are thinking about working tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday, and I have to wonder if people remembered. I myself am an Army veteran, and not that that means a lot to you. Just trying to make it sound like I'm serious about what I'm saying by adding that I could just as well not be or not have had any military experience, and I still would be saying the same things I'm going to say. We have to remember the things that were intended to be remembered on Memorial Day. Memorial Day is a national holiday. It's not about people losing loved ones. It's not just about people dying. People die every day. The Memorial Day as a national holiday is a purpose. It has to be a good purpose, or else we should reject it. And we, the people, are responsible for our own actions. So we are going to try to remember Memorial Day as the way it should be. I'm going to see if I can help. Memorial Day can be had by any country, because every country has had soldiers, and they've also had soldiers who died for their cause, and a lot of those soldiers died because they were deceived into thinking that they were dying or they were fighting for a good cause, and they weren't. That might have been due to being isolated, not being educated, not having had familiarity with other countries and freedom itself. And some people have grown up and died not knowing freedom. So we shouldn't be too surprised that people can grow up and join the military or be forced to join the military and die for no good reason. Every country can have its soldiers, as I said, and they can have its own heroes. And Hitler had his heroes. It was not a good thing. Remembering those heroes is something that we reject, and we can reject that. We can reject that kind of mistake in our own country, whatever that country might happen to be. We might be part of a country that has a form of government that doesn't support freedom. It might support dictatorship, or it might support rule by few. It might support a method of rule that is not by law, and it's not by the people. It might be by whim of a few people, or it might be not by whim, but it might be by a few people. And either way is wrong. Either one is not of the people. So we should remember those who died and those who sacrificed only if it has value to us. And that value would have to be so that we would continue living in a form of government that would promote freedom. It's about this Memorial Day is in relation to a government, not just people dying. As I said, it has to be in support of, or a purpose that was to support freedom, and under the mode or the context that the government that for whom people gave their lives supported freedom. Alexander Hamilton talked about the form of government and how important it is, and how we should distinguish it from what seems to be okay. Right now, to a lot of people, apparently, things seem to be like we're just having a bad government. We just have a bad government right now. We have a government that's supposed to be, we have a government that's under the Constitution, but people just aren't behaving correctly. And I hope to be able to explain that the opposite is the case. Now, a lot of people are aware of this, A lot of people have stuck to this fact, but a lot of people forgot, or they gave up. They gave up. They were standing for this country, and then because when people tried to fix the problem and Congress kept acting like, no, everything's the way it should be, and judges said, shut up and sit down, when people tried to bring these problems to court, then some of the people gave up. And it's like if you put a glass in an aquarium where there are two fish, one fish constantly tries to attack the other fish because it's that fish's nature. I'm not talking about whether the fish is good or bad. I'm just talking about how people can be, their behavior can be formed, can be bullied into a certain surrendering type behavior. So you can have an aquarium where one fish attacks the other fish, and the other fish, of course, tries to get away. And then the fish that has the attacking tendency is separated from the other fish by a glass. Well, the fish in the water can't see the glass. So the fish keeps trying to do what it wants to do, and it keeps bumping into the glass. And then the fish that normally, by its nature, attacks the other fish eventually gives up. And you can remove the glass, and the fish can actually swim around with the other fish that is normally being attacked. And the fish that normally attacks gives up. It just acts like, well, I can't do anything, so I'm not going to bother trying. When actually it could. It could succeed in attacking the other fish. And that's what's been happening for the last 6 years, ever since the end of 2008, when nobody addressed the problem with the Obama. When Obama was about to usurp the office of president, and people were becoming very angry and very concerned, and they're thinking, of course, the government's going to do something about this. We just have to bring it to court, and the judges will do the right thing because they took an oath to obey the Constitution. So then they go to court, and then one after another, the judges said no. They told the people trying to fix the problem who were concerned, the real patriots, the ones who are actually looking out for the judges and their families and their grandchildren, where the judges were telling them to shut up, basically. Shut up, you don't have any standing, so just sit down. Well, after a while, some people give up. A lot of people out there have not given up. And they're the true patriots, and we definitely need those people. Those people are looking out for us. So try being in the military since January 20th, 2009, when there was a usurper instead of a real president, because Obama never qualified. And you won't find a member of Congress who officially, for a permanent record in writing, in a court situation, will say that Obama qualified. You will not find one member of Congress who'd be willing to do that, because they know it's not true. Obama never proved his eligibility. The Constitution is very clear. Before the amendments were written, before the Bill of Rights, the basic Constitution, the 7 articles, it says in the second article that that there are requirements for someone to become president, and it says, it doesn't mince words. It says in an absolute sense, a person who doesn't meet these criteria will not become president, and uses the word shall, which is an absolute statement, and that's in Article 2. Section 1, paragraph 5 is where most of the criteria are. There are some other criteria spread out through the Constitution, but these are the main ones. And so in order for someone to become president and qualify, that means that they had to prove it to someone. Well, it never happened. Every time there was every time the process was requiring the proving process, the proving part of it, their credentials, somebody would say, I don't have these. And then the people who were responsible for either helping Obama or Obama himself would just be quiet, wouldn't say anything. And so days are going by, And people are saying we don't have a birth certificate, for example. And the birth certificate in itself is not the criterion. The Constitution doesn't say I have to have a birth certificate, but it just so happens that that is the easiest way, and in many cases the only way, to prove if someone meets two of the criteria that are mentioned in Article 2, Section 1, Paragraph 5, or Clause 5, where it talks about the age and natural-born citizenship, which is not irregular citizenship. So then we have to remember what this country was founded on. It's founded on a form of government that was intended to keep us free, and the biggest way to keep us free and to protect us was to make sure that at least the office of president, who would also be the commander-in-chief, a very, 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 you can't emphasize how sensitive that office and that position would be to the security and the safety of a nation, would actually have someone who's president occupying that office. So, you see the relationship here. We have the office of president is also where the commander-in-chief is. The president of the United States is also the commander-in-chief. So when we remember who sacrificed and the fact that people did sacrifice, we must also remember it wasn't just people sacrificing, because as I said, there are countries that have bad motives, and we're glad that those people died. We didn't want them being strong and attacking us. It's sad that they died, that they were deceived and they were fighting for the wrong cause. However, we can't have enemies. We can't have someone pointing a gun at us and threatening us and our kids. So when we remember the office of president, we're also remembering the commander-in-chief, the military. It's all connected. So when we have a Memorial Day and we're still avoiding this issue where we have someone who's not the president, therefore he's a usurper. He's also not just a usurper, he's also someone who's destroying the form of government for which people died. The form of government is how things can be resolved and stay that form of government. If you destroy the form of government, then there's no remedy, and you have a pretend government. For example, the reason why one of the big reasons why we had the Revolutionary War was because it wasn't just because of abusiveness, it was because, as Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, we had a pretend government. There was pretended legislation because there was no legitimate process. The process of representation it didn't exist. It was just rules were being made outside of the people's involvement. And so connect the dot to now, ever since January 20th, 2009, if we have someone who's pretending to be president, that means we have a pretend government, and all of the legislation which requires, and all the legislation which does exist, requires the office of president to be part of that process. The Constitution is very clear, and when it talks about the duties of Congress, and that in the legislative process, that that a president has to sign whether to reject or accept bills that are presented, and then if a president rejects, there's a process for that. If the president accepts, it becomes law. So how many bills have people thought became law since January 20th, 2009? None of them are law. So therefore we have pretend government. If you have someone who's pretending or usurping, then that process that has a dependency on that office being filled is a pretend process. And people have to be brave enough to say that. Thomas Jefferson was brave enough. He said, it's pretended legislation. And they were willing to stake their lives on it. all of them who signed it were aware that they could be hung, and they were constantly running away from the British. Were trying to advance on them and trying to get them, and they were catching some of their letters. Even the members of the Continental Congress were writing, and they were being caught and read and used to embarrass the members of Congress whenever possible, but they were never, fortunately, able to physically reach the members of the Continental Congress. So now let's talk about the members of the military that we're supposed to remember. The fact that, in honoring those who have sacrificed, we also, in the tradition of Memorial Day, and it makes sense to do this, we remember the potential sacrifice that members of the current military could give. But as I said, it's not a good thing unless they're fighting for a good cause. Now, how many members of the military realized that they could not follow the orders of a usurper since January 20th, 2009, and said, I have to honor my oath to the people. I owe my honoring the oath to the people, not to you or any particular person, but to the people. I took an oath under the Constitution to support and defend the Constitution, and that's for the people, not for particular members of Congress, not for people who want to support the enemy, those who commit treason. So, how many of those people have actually honored their oath? Lieutenant Colonel Lieutenant Colonel Terry Lakin, he did that. When it came time, when he was actually confronted with an order that would have come from a president, he said, at this time, I have to make sure that I'm following the Constitution. This is not a regular standing order. This is an order that should be coming from a president, and of course I can't follow the order of the enemy of the states. I can't come from an order from someone who's not president, and I can't follow an order that didn't come from any authority over me in behalf of the United States. I can only follow orders in behalf of the United States that are of the United States. And anything that comes from Obama or came from Obama since January 20th or ever has no authority. Someone who has authority on the Constitution has to be vested by the authority of the Constitution. It's that simple. For people to continue playing that someone's president and that everything in the Constitution, which is really clear, can still be considered president, is committing treason. These are really basic truths that people are not facing and they're not acting upon. Instead, they would rather play along, play the devil's game, bury their heads in the sand, hope that things will get better later. That's an extremely dangerous and irresponsible position, and it currently is extremely offensive and demoralizing to those in the military whom we need there, those who will honor the oath to the people, the oath that they take, the military oath. Those are the people we would want to trust with rifles. Those are the people that we would want to trust with tanks and aircraft that can drop 100 bombs in a minute. So, people of the United States, you have to wake up. You have to just face some basic, scary truths, and you have to act accordingly. You should never have called Obama president. You should have never played that game. You don't play the usurper's game. The usurper is not just a usurper. He's the enemy. And here's how I can explain that. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution says, that the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. The Republican form of government is a representative democracy. The representative democracy is also, it's not just a representation, it's how bills become law. Bills become law under the control of the people, under the representation context of the people. That's why we can say that the government can be of the people if that process is in place. Well, this representative process, this representative democracy, is extremely critical to freedom, and you can't have freedom without it. If you have freedom in a country that doesn't have representative democracy, you can consider yourself lucky for that moment, because there's no control by the people to keep that system. It can be changed by a few people to go the wrong direction. So, Republican form of government is to be guaranteed to the states and the union. The word guarantee is only used once in the Constitution. It's an extremely important, precious word which is used in the most sensitive part, most fundamental aspect of the United States Constitution, which is our law. The guarantee, the United States, which means the federal government, which also means the other states. The responsibility of all states is to look out for each and every other state. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. That is where our freedom is. If we don't have that form of government, there's no guarantee, there's no hope for tomorrow. The hope is only in fighting for maintaining the Republican form of government, which we lost. January 20th at noon, 2009, according to the Constitution, we lost our Republican form of government. And it was a lot worse than that, which shows how sensitive the office of president is. We're not just losing something. We're not just losing a Republican form of government. We also have a person who hates the Constitution, who's occupying the office physically, not officially, just physically. And we should never, ever treat, honor, respect, or speak of Obama as ever having become president. If you, citizens of the United States, continue to not do that, I don't know how you're going to explain it to your kids. That was your responsibility. Let me encourage you. Since noon, January 20th, on that day, 2009, since that time, I have placed my own bumper stickers on my car stating these facts. Obama's not president. Amendment 20, Section 3. Obama never qualified. Never call Obama president. You disrespect the people in the military. You demoralize them. I've been saying whatever it took to have people face this. And I've gotten a lot of compliments. In fact, 99% of the comments that I've heard about the signs I've had on my car have been positive. And they've thanked me. They said, I really like your sign. Or they say, thank you for putting that sign on your car. Well, there are 300 million people in this country. And I don't know of anybody else in this country. I'm not saying they haven't, but I'm around a lot of people. I'm around a lot of cars every day. And I don't see any car stating this fact. Obama's not president. That's the basic fact. If you keep playing around that, you'll never solve it. You'll never solve the problem. This is the core problem. If you start with Obama never became president, then everything else will fall into place. Then you can prove all the points that the people who joined the Tea Parties were trying to prove, that there's no representation, Congress isn't listening to us. All these other points that this country is not following the Constitution. All these other points can be proven very quickly. But if you keep playing around and pretending that Obama's president with them, then it'll never be addressed. And the problem, like a fire or like a cancer, will continue to grow. It's inevitable. You place, you start a fire around things that can burn, they'll burn. If cancer starts in something or a person, a biological entity, a person or animal, if there's cancer starting there, it's by definition, it's going to grow. And what you do is you remove the cancer. First you state, there's cancer. And then, number two, you remove the cancer. If no one has a diagnosis, then there's not going to be a remedy. There's not going to be a solution. And the diagnosis is, we do not have a president. Obama is not president, never became one. And there's no way that he could be allowed to become one because he tried acting like one in 2009, which by the Constitution forbids him from ever, even if he were later found to be able to, and then try to follow the rules later. In another election, you'd have to have the permission. This is barely possible. He'd have to have permission of 2/3 of each member, each House of Congress, the House of Representatives and House of Senate. 2/3 of them would have to forgive that. Now, what would that say about our country, the status of our country, if that happened? If 2/3 of each of the houses forgave Obama, trying to keep in mind the horror that I'm trying to describe, the disrespect to the military, the fact there was someone who was trying to take over the military, and the fact that Congress itself went along with it.